Hello again, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for our second lesson of Holy Week. For the last lesson, we talked about the importance of this past Sunday, which was Palm Sunday. For this lesson, we have moved through the week into Thursday and will be sharing and remembering the stories of what is known as Maundy Thursday. Now, Maundy Thursday is a day of Holy Week that doesn't really receive a lot of attention in comparison to Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. There are lots of Christians that have never celebrated Maundy Thursday or have even been to a Maundy Thursday service. That is exactly why I want to share with you the story of what happened on the day that we have called Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday is different from Palm Sunday because it has two important stories from the Bible that tell us about it. One of those stories is familiar to most people, where the other, maybe not so much. The first of those stories is the story of the Last Supper. You can read about the Last Supper in Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 29, Mark chapter 14, verses 12 through 25, and Luke chapter 22, verses 7 through 22. In that story, Jesus and his disciples were celebrating the festival of Passover. Passover was the day that the Jewish people celebrated and remembered the time that God delivered them from slavery under Pharaoh and the Egyptians from the story of Exodus in the Old Testament. Jesus shared this Passover meal with his disciples. But it is what he did next during the meal which made this Passover different and special from any other. Jesus took bread and a cup of wine, gave thanks, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body given for you, and this cup is the new covenant which is poured out for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Now, this was something that was totally new to the disciples and was most likely very confusing to them. They had no idea when he said, "My body is given for you and new covenant poured out for you," that Jesus was really speaking of himself. This was not the only oddity that night, though. John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17 tells another part of what took place that night. In the middle of the Passover meal, Jesus stood up, filled a bowl with water, and washed his disciples' feet. It was a simple task for Jesus to do, but it was something that was expected only for slaves to do. For Jesus to wash his disciples' feet was like a teacher washing the feet of their students. A person who had authority washing the feet of their subjects. It was a moment of humility and teaching Jesus' disciples who wished to be like him to embrace the role of a servant. Jesus told them that just as he had washed their feet, they should follow his example and wash each other's feet. Jesus modeled what it meant for his disciples and what it means for us to be like servants, even when we may feel very uncomfortable doing so. These stories are the ones that have led to the church's practice of communion and washing of each other's feet. They were also two of the last moments Jesus spent with his disciples before his death, which is the day that we will talk about in our next lesson, Good Friday.